Hello and welcome. So it has been a big weekend for us, a big weekend for the team, and I thought it'd be a good time to come on and do a recap of the Arnold Sports Festival this year. So the first event was 120 kilo deadlift, 4 reps. It was a good event for both girls. It was always going to be a great event for Becky. I did have her down for doing 12 plus reps on this. I think she'd done a set of 10 in training, which looked quite manageable, and I knew she would do more on the day. And she did. Rebecca did a set of 13 reps. So she's just got the strongest posterior chain. She's just able to keep going and going. Her positions have always been really strong on the deadlift. I think she did come to me with a 100 kilo deadlift when she started. So yeah, she is very, very strong, and that was a great set for her. Chantal, this was a little bit of a nervy event. She's not a bad deadlifter, especially for a body weight by any count at all. She's a very good deadlifter. There was a couple of errors with her bar path. When we started, she was deadlifting with a gap between the shin and the bar, so obviously she wasn't tight to the bar. She'd also just had a knee surgery 2 weeks before starting with me, so the biggest challenge here was teaching her that bar needs to stay close and in contact, but also not irritating her knee with that contact. So we messed around with a couple of things earlier on, and we found that if she wore a knee sleeve on the affected knee, she was able to get really tight to that bar and get subsequent quality reps. So what she did out there, getting 11 reps, completely dumbfounded me. I knew that she was going to get more than she thought, but 11 is more than I expected. And to be honest, looking at the set, I think she could possibly have done another one or two. So yeah, first event was fantastic. That left the girls, it was enough for second for Rebecca. So someone did just pip her with, oh my goodness, someone got 16 reps there. And for Chantal, that was enough for sixth with 11 reps. So mid-pack for Chantal and right at the top for Rebecca. So yeah, the next event was the Husafell carry. Now, I knew that this was going to be a tricky event for Beck. She didn't actually manage to pick this weight sandbag up until the week before competition. So she'd really struggled with the logistics of a Husafell pick. I coached to pick a Husafell bag up upright. It is the most efficient way when you get the hang of it, but she was just really struggling with that. So she ended up finding her own way. She was pushing the bags over and picking it up flat, and eventually the week before competition she did manage to do it once, but it was a bit of a nail biter for me because I just would have preferred for her to have more practice and drill that more going into it. They also didn't allow any specific warm-ups on the Husafell, which greatly annoyed me at the time, but I won't get into it too much now. They were only allowing them to warm up on round dual-ply sandbags, so they didn't get any practice with that pick on the warm-up either, which for first-timers, I just would have liked them to have that, but they didn't have it. It might have actually been a blessing for Rebecca, because she went out and she just picked up the bag. She just picked up the bag and she ran with it. That was a much better result than I was expecting for Rebecca in that event. I thought that the pick would be much slower than that, as it was when she did it in the gym. But yeah, great result. Adrenaline gave her the kick up the arse that she needed to get that bag up the floor, and it was a really good score. Chantal did get on with the upright Husafell pickup, and I noticed that early on. I think it was a second week of training, she did an accidental one motion, and I was like, you should just be doing that. You should just be doing that on the floor, because that looks so slick. And then we devoted the next 4 weeks pretty much just to practicing that pick. She was stepping back from the Husafell and running at it for sets and just sort of really, really nailing that approach and drilling that. And I think if you watch the video, it was faultless. The way that she approached the bag was faultless, and it made such a difference. She was like 0.3 seconds away from the overall win in that event. The only place where I think that she could have shaved off time is I think that she could have launched the bag. So rather than running all the way over the line with the bag in her arms, I think she should have launched it. They were told in rules meetings that they weren't allowed to do that, but others did. Others did, and the girl who was slightly quicker did throw a bag over the line and wasn't penalised. So Chantal should have took that risk, and she could have won that one. But very, very close, and a fantastic, fantastic result for a first timer in a field of much more experienced girls. Brilliant. So the next event was the axel floor to overhead. Again, for Becky, this was a bit of a tricky one. She'd not hit the weight in the prep. She'd had a couple of nightmares with the axle. The clean wasn't really gelling. She did come down for a session with me, and we made some improvements, but just the setup was just off. The setup was just off. We need to go into a good long block of working on this and really iron out the technical inefficiencies and the inconsistencies in a press. We've just not had the time to get through a solid training block with that yet. It's always good to sort of hope that your client's going to pull the results out of the bag on the day when they've not hit that number in training, but it is also important to be realistic and let your client know that it's not the be-all and end-all, and that it is okay to zero events, and that it's just a part of sport. It just highlights areas that we need to work going forward. So yeah, it was a 0 for Rebecca. On the axle, she had 3 good attempts at it, 3 good cleans, just wasn't quite there on the day. We need to do some work on that dip and drive and keep her nice and vertical. Chantal has been doing very well in the axle in prep. The pressure of the moment got to her, so she ended up getting 3 reps. I was hoping for a pace set of 5 to 6, but it was just new. It was first time and nerves really that caught Chantal out there. So I don't know if she was expecting the field to get as many reps as they did. So I think the first field out, I think there was 8 and 9 reps, and then someone else come out and got 10 reps. And I think when you're pacing for a set of 6 and you hear 11 to beat, I think that her head went a bit, and I think she thought, right, I've just got to go. Forget the pacing. I'm just going to go. And she set off too quick, like a bullet out of a gun. She got 3 really good reps and then lost it. To be honest, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think that most athletes did make that mistake at some point earlier on in the career, sort of paying too much attention to what other people around you are doing, rather than focusing on your own game plan. If she would have got the 5 reps, the scoring in that would have been very different, and they would have been very valuable points. However, learning curve, she didn't. She got the 3 reps, and that was enough for 12th. So not the best results. If she would have got, for example, 6 reps, 6 reps would have been enough for 8th, which would have been 4 more points. So there's a lot of points just in 1 more rep there. So yeah, that was quite a costly one for Chantal, but we were still in a good place. I think we were around 6th overall by this point. And we were going into the sandbag to shoulder for the next event, which had also been going excellently for her in prep. So yeah, the sandbag to shoulder was next. It wasn't Becky's favourite event to train, to be honest. Anything overly cardiovascular isn't really her jam, but it's a work in progress. So what we learned, it was supposed to be written down a 90-second event, which if you've ever done sandbag to shoulder, you will appreciate that that is a long time to be doing sandbag to shoulder for. So we explored a couple of different methods with Becky, and we found that she was better off chaining a few reps together, then taking a step back, breathing, going back in and getting a few more reps strung together. That was the plan. The plan was several bursts of 3 to 4 reps. Didn't quite go that way under the lights. So she did do that for, I'd say, the first 5 or 6 reps, but then I don't know if it was just the moment or her nerves or whatever it was. But then the gap started getting too long. She was resting for too long in between each little burst, and she ended up getting timed out. And she ended up with 8 reps, which was enough for 14. So she did lose quite a lot of points on that one. However, it's not a million miles away from what she had hoped for. I would have liked her to get a few more, but it's just working on that pacing. It's cardiovascular ability. It's slower to develop for some people. And yeah. Chantal put on an absolute masterclass on the sandbag to shoulder. She worked continuously for the entire time with no breaks. So Chantal's very fit. Anyway, she's worked as a personal trainer. She's done a lot of fitness. Her body weight is light, and this was always going to be a great event for her. So I realised early on that Chantal is very good at controlling the eccentrics of the bag, and it also meant that she wasn't doing as much of this with the sandbag on the floor, which was what was costing her majority of the time, was those resets in between. So we managed to get, this beautiful chain reaction of reps. She was beaten by one rep on that, so one girl got one more than her. The only way that I could see Chantal getting a better result on that is if she was more actively bouncing the bags off the floor rather than towards the end of the set, some of them resets at the floor. She's having a little pause at that bottom position. I would be trying to sort of utilise momentum and really touch and go that sandbag off the floor just to get into the next rep quicker if that was me. Possibly could have got a couple more reps with that sort of timing, but again, first timer in a novice field, outstanding result. So the last event was the farmer's walk, which was 60 kilos in hand. Again, it's not actually gone wonderfully for either of the girls in prep. Neither of them really like training this. I find that a lot of novices, first timers, don't like training farmers because it's just getting used to pain tolerance. It's building that pain tolerance up, and it's accepting that just because something hurts like hell, it doesn't mean you can't do it. And it's quite a common problem with novices, just getting used to feeling that weight in your hand and knowing that it's okay. It's meant to feel like that. Your hand's not falling apart. So yeah, it was heavy for both girls. They both did this in the moment significantly quicker than it has gone in training. Teams were really, really tight for this within the field. So first place finished the 30 metres in 14.67 seconds. And last place was 19 seconds. So there was only 5 seconds between all 16 girls. So it was very, very close. There were some really exciting races. Yeah, so both girls ended up getting a really good time for this. So Rebecca finished her run in 16.4 seconds, which is like 5 seconds quicker than she's done it in training. And Chantal got a time penalty for sliding over the line. She would have been the fastest in a heat, and I think she would have been in the top 3 overall. But she slid over the line, which is, again, another lesson which is important to learn at this sort of level where there's not as much at stake. And she ended up getting a time of 18.9. It was quicker than that. But yeah, that penalty ended up being really costly. And that knocked her down to 11th for that event. Overall, she finished in 6th place, which for a lightweight first timer in an open weight novice category, I think is an extraordinary result. Both girls have over-exceeded their expectations on everything. I know that she would have liked to get that axle, but I just think realistically it just needs another couple of months cooking, and that will be there. It's clearly not a strength issue when you watch the fails. It's just the line. We just need to tidy that dip and drive up, and that will be there. So let's get on to that Sunday. So on Sunday, it was the Open's Strong Women competition. So it was an unreal lineup. It was unreal. So we had our own Alice Cartmail. We had Chloe Brennan. We had Andrea Seed. We had Shannon Smith. And we had Sam Taylor. So 5 really strong, really experienced women, all know how to put a show on. I was so excited for this with these events. The events were exactly the same as the novice competition on the Friday, only instead of the farmers, they had a super yoke, which was part of the reason that I didn't want to do this. But yeah, so it was a 190 deadlift for reps. It was a 100 kilo Husafel race for reps. No, not for reps. Just a race. Getting excited. It was a 90 kilo axle floor to overhead. It was an 80 kilo sandbag to shoulder. And then finally, it was the super yoke, which was 270 kilos. So Alice has had a really good prep on these events. There's nothing really that stood out as being a weakness. Her yoke had got significantly quicker over the prep. Her axle had got significantly stronger over the prep. Her deadlifting was looking great in the suit, or at least consistent with how it usually looks. She's also lost quite a considerable amount of body weight over the last few months, which has had a really positive influence on her cardiovascular ability. She was looking better than I've ever seen her going into this, so I wanted to be there. I wanted to watch the magic happen. I wanted to try and make sure that she was in the right mindset and she was turning it on, because Alice, watching her sometimes when I've not been there on the day, I just think, oh, I wished I was there, because it just looks like she gets complacent and starts just having a nice time and being happy to be there. And yes, you should be happy to be there, but also don't forget how good you are. Don't forget how good you are, and don't just get having too nice of a time. Remember why you're here, and remember that you can beat these girls. I wanted her to go in, not just... She'd said a few things in the prep, like, oh, but just with the lineup and everything, you know, it's just going to be crazy to be there. I'm like, yeah, but you're in that lineup as well. And you're in that lineup as one of the lineup, because you're good. So yeah, I just really wanted to be there to not let her get complacent and just keep her in the game. She's so in the game. So yeah, up first was the 190 deadlift for reps. It's a comfortable weight for Alice. She's pulled this weight for 10 reps raw. I was expecting a suited number to be around consistent with that, to be honest. I didn't think that she'd do a great deal more, just because she doesn't really love wearing the suit. She doesn't get as much out of the suit as I'd like her to get out of the suit for reps yet, but that is largely just because she predominantly competes on the natural pathway where suits aren't allowed, so it's a difficult one with how long to let her wear a suit for at any given time. So yeah, she's worn a suit for like the last 6 to 8 weeks of this prep. It's mostly just been endurance building in the suit and working on her breathing and the timing and keeping that tension in. So yeah, I was pleased with her getting 9 reps. It was all she needed. The only way she could have scored more points is if she would have beat Andrea, who got 14, and she wasn't going to do that. So she just needed to beat Chloe on that event. Chloe got 8, so it was a great result. 2nd place in that for Alice. So up next was the 20-metre Husafell sprint with a 100-kilo bag. I'd said to Alice before we went out, don't underestimate the weight class girls, because even if they are a bit slower than you are on the pick, they will be fast across the floor. I knew they would. I've done these kind of races against these kind of girls, and I know how quickly they can move. Alice was in a heat with Chloe Brennan and Andrea. She finished mid-pack within that heat, so Chloe was just that little bit quicker on the pick. It looked like she'd really practiced the one motion, sort of getting into immediate acceleration. Alice was just a little bit slower to take off. I think her speed across the floor was fantastic. It was much better than I've seen her do this sort of event in the past. Alice took 3rd. Yeah, she took 3rd in that event behind Chloe and Shannon. Both, as I thought, were very, very quick across the floor. With that bag. There wasn't a great deal in it. She did that in 21 seconds. I think going forward, it's that address. It's drilling that address. It's drilling that pick, and it's feeling confident enough to one motion it, because I know that it's something that she can do. It's just feeling confident enough to do it in the moment and trusting yourself. But great results, 3rd in that field, really good for Alice on that event. So yeah, up next was the axle, which was the nail biter. So she has been hitting 90 on the axle. The biggest problem that she was having earlier on in the prep was the clean. She came to me for a 1-to-1 and we sorted that out really easily. She was just setting up with the bar too far away from her on the floor, and it was putting her in a position where she had to pull with the arms. She ended up hitting the 90 single about 3 weeks out, and by peak week she hit it for a paced set of 2, and that's what we decided we were going to do on the day. That is exactly what she did on the day. She executed the plan perfectly. It's the best overhead has ever gone in a competition. I think it's the only time that Alice has ever actually done what she feels she's capable of up there on the floor. Looking at it, looking at the first rep, the only thing I changed is I wish she would have gone for the 2nd rep 5 to 10 seconds faster, just from how easy the first one was, and then I think she would have got the 3rd. And I think she could have tied Chloe on that event. if she would have just had another 10 seconds to take somewhere, and I don't know that she needed it before the second rep. So I think she did the right thing because she needed those 2 points. That was really important. But going forward, I do think that we should be thinking about pacing her for more than that. It looks like she could have done 3. They look great. Really, really happy with those. And that put her in a brilliant position going into the sandbag to shoulder. It was a sandbag to shoulder, and honestly, this, I think, was the most valuable moment in the competition for Alice. This is what made the difference. So Alice in this event got joint first with 7 reps. And the timing on this event was reduced, so it was 90 seconds. It was listed as being a 90-second event, and they ended up having 75 seconds. So that means that Alice worked at a pace of 1 rep every 10 seconds right to the end. She maintained the same pace. The reps looked robotic. They looked easy. It looked like she could have continued for the full 90 seconds and got 9 reps. That is the best performance I've ever seen from Alice on an event like this. It's the only time where she's gone for the duration of time without stopping. There's a couple of comps where Alice has done where she's at an event like this and she's walked away with like 5 to 10 seconds left, and it's done my head in because I thought you could have just made it look like you were going to try for 1 more rep at least. And there was none of that. She worked balls to the wall for the entire time. It looked great. I'm really, really proud of this set. This was brilliant. And then that put her in a brilliant position for the last event, which was probably her best event, and she was tied on points with Chloe Brennan going into the yoke, which is probably both of their best events. So I'd actually had to leave at this point and go to Joe's competition, but I was just on the score sheet like this. I was like, Claire, has it happened yet? Has it happened yet? Can you send me the video, Claire? I was so excited. And this is why. So just watch this for a race. Just exactly the same. Neck and neck. Neck and neck on that turn. Unbelievable. What a race. Proper strongman. So there was points down on the score sheet. There was 0.7 of a second in between the 2 girls on that run, and that put Chloe in first place as the Arnold champion, and Alice 1 point behind, was it? Or half? And yeah, Alice 1 point behind in second place. So all in all, I think that was actually Alice's most consistent performance. There was a few tiny things where I think we can work on going forwards, where that could be even sharper. But yeah, I am thrilled with that as a result. And yeah, she's beat some really hard to beat people there. So I'm really proud of her. That's going to be massive for her confidence going forward into next year, going into the next few months. Just knowing that she can now do that in her overhead events. It's going to be huge. So yeah, I think that was an outstanding performance from all 3 girls. I'm really, really happy with how that weekend went. The Arnold on a whole, I've got to say, didn't love it. I thought that there was half of the stalls, half of the things there to do, and double the people. I had to take Ronnie on Sunday. I had my daughter with me, and it just getting from one place to another in there was unbelievable. The food, there was no real food options. The food they did have was overpriced. Yeah, I do think that the Arnold itself was actually quite bad. Quite terribly bad this year, but I do think that Ant did a good job. Apart from that warm-up issue, apart from not letting him use the Husafel bags for no reason, I think it was a well-run comp. The actual size of the arena was very impressive, the banners were really good. Yeah, so great comp, not so big on the Arnold, fantastic weekend for the team.